Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Working in Hockey podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Bowins, joined as always by Lukas, Georgas. And today we've got two fine gentlemen with us here from LUG Sports, Ray and Ethan, here to tell us more about LUG Sports, their journey in creating it, how they're shaping the not only hockey, but sports landscape across campuses across North America today. Ethan, Ray, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing good. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, everything's great. Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I teed it up as best I could there with kind of what LUG is all about and what you guys are up to today, but would love to hear from you guys first here for those who may not know or haven't seen you online, on campus, or on anything else that you guys are there. But what is LUG Sports? What are you guys up to? And how was it initially founded or created?
Yeah, definitely. LUG Sports started variation of timelines, but the me and Ethan together version about 2015, 2016. Started a little bit earlier when I was at Western, Ethan was at Queens. We both were, growing up hockey players playing, double A, triple A. Ethan junior B, nice washed up former junior B goalie. And really, we were just trying to play more hockey with our friends in a way that just made sense. You get to university and there isn't a whole lot. There's intramurals, but that's like once a week. It's not very serious program. And not everyone wants to go play junior A, or in my case, I actually tried out for the Western team, not knowing just how good they were. And I had no business being at that tryout. Learned that one the hard way. And so I started a hockey league and Ethan did the same. There was a shinny that was going on, kind of professionalized it a little bit, commercialized it, if you will. In the second year, in my last university, we had, I think, 14 teams. And, Ethan, I think in Queens, they had about 8 teams. And then 2015, 2016, like I said earlier, we combined it, started off with 2 cities, Western, Queens. Then I think we added Windsor and then Waterloo/Laurier, 4 cities. And then, we've been off to the races ever since. And now we're in about 60 plus cities, 20,000, 25,000 players all around North America. And it's grown a lot and we're pretty excited about it. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, and you guys kind of touched on it there, but kind of like what were the early days like, and how did you recruit players and gain interest and really expand to other campuses initially?
Yeah, Ray kind of said, we both kind of had the same idea in different locations. Like Ray was going to Western, I was going to Queens, but I think pretty well the evolution of the business came about the same way, in that when you get to university, you get through minor hockey, right? Like as a youth. And you get to this point where only the 1% can play, right? Like the varsity team, the junior A teams, the highest levels are really only available to the fewest amount of people. And everybody else either gets kind of left in the dust or just not a lot of options. So when we came around in our respective campuses and started saying to people through word of mouth, just hey, we want to play more hockey, who's down? You're talking to a lot of players that played the double A, the triple A, the single A, whatever it was, lots of different hockey, high school hockey as well. Right. And you're used to playing 5 days a week, 4 days a week. Even if you played the program on campus, it might just be, in a semester, you might only have 4 or 5 games. So you go from playing 4 days a week to 4 times. And so everyone's answer was, do you want to play more hockey? You want to play puck? Everyone's answer was yes. And so that is basically how the business started. Ray did his at Western. I was doing the same thing at Queens. You start networking a little bit. It turns out you're able to start a team. Your buddy that lives in another house, some friends can start a team. That group of guys who go to, from Ottawa, but go to Queens can start a team. The other guys from another high school, can start a team. And next thing you know, you have enough to get a little league going. And that's basically what ended up happening in both locations, and how we kind of got the first set of games booked and, the first leagues up and off the ground. But in terms of actually how it started to grow beyond that, honestly, a lot of it was just word of mouth. I mean, we started doing what we were doing on our respective campuses and trying to make it a little bit more fun, differentiating it a little bit from what you'd see, around campus or around the town. Referees getting really great jerseys, bringing out photographers, having some parties, or just kind of connecting people in a way that wasn't really happening in other capacities. And so that's what we started doing, and word started getting around, right? Our friends would come back and say, what are you doing for hockey this year? What did you do when you were at school last year? And everyone's kind of back for the summer. You live in the glory days, playing hockey in the summer, wherever you're from. And one thing leads to another. And we started getting messages from people basically saying, hey, you got to bring this to this campus. I think Ray mentioned that we expanded to, from 2 to 4 cities when we actually brought the leagues together ourselves, which I think was Waterloo and Windsor as the next two. And then like we just started getting messages from people personally or on our account at the time, which was just Lug Hockey on Instagram. And we started getting messages from people at McGill, and then at Dalhousie, and then at Guelph, and and it just kind of kept snowballing. And that's kind of, I think, when Ray and I realized that there was something that was there. And that's when we really started to think about how you could turn this from more than honestly like a fun hobby that, really brought people together into like a more formal business. And it's kind of been like feet on the ground, starting to run ever since.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And that's kind of where I wanted to take it next, was what was that leap from something that's cool and gets around to your buddies and people you played with to, shit, we've got a real business here. I think that that's something people are running into a lot these days with the kind of social media boom, creator boom, all those things. People start getting followers or a little bit of money, and then they go, how do I turn this into a real business? Or what do I actually do from here to capitalize, monetize, all those things? You kind of touched on when that was, but how did you guys kind of tangibly go about, okay, let's turn this into a real thing, a real business here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but the answer is not so straightforward, because honestly, like for us, I mean, we didn't even, like myself, I didn't even really start taking a salary out of this business until last couple of years here, like very recently, and still not, market rates or anything like that. I mean, this is such a pure entrepreneurial business that started off as something that was just an idea. For me, when I was in fourth year at Western, I did like a business in one of my classes, business like plan type thing, and it was called the College Hockey League, and it was essentially this. But from like how do you monetize this? The money's always been there, in the sense that when we get people to play, we spend accordingly. It's most of the business's variable costs, but turning it into a large scale kind of enterprise with employees and people that are executing, not just running off the backs of myself and Ethan, and that's a bigger leap, and that takes time. The word bootstrapping comes to mind, because this is the definition of bootstrapping. It's something me and Ethan have been doing together the whole time, and we don't have external investors or anything like that. And so, the how do you monetize it? That kind of happens over time. I think social media and just how big of a marketing tool it's become really opened the door for us in a lot of ways. Like me and Ethan joke that DMs, when they first became a thing on Instagram, even before it was, we were, the second that capability opened, that was our biggest marketing tactic to try and find new teams, is we were literally sending, I don't even think they were called DMs then, but Instagram messages to people, and they weren't getting from anyone else. So every time they got it, they were like, oh wow, this is kind of cool, and I'll talk to these guys. And that was probably 6-7 years ago. I don't remember, but yeah, to that monetization question, it's something that takes a long time, a lot longer than you think, and you have to really be willing to put in the hours and the time outside of just saying, oh, I want to make a lot of money, because not so easy to accomplish early on.
100%, 100%. And I resonate with that well. I think you talked about the word of mouth side of things, Ethan, and Ray there with like the DMs and organic approach. Like that's the same as working in hockey. It's kind of just, crowdsource, open DMs, open door policy. And, it's hard to sell a handheld vacuum in today's world, but if you create something that people love, it's a lot easier to get it out there and get it off the ground floor and have people interested, right? Started with dudes that you guys played with and knew, and knew we're looking for more kind of exposure or games while in school there. Today, how much of what you're doing is word of mouth organic versus now kind of bigger structured business, a little bit more strategy and thought behind everything that you're doing, I assume, but how do you walk that line or balance of organic, word of mouth, but hey, we got to get out to more people too?
Yeah, it's a good question. Something that we actually have talked about, and I think it's changing a little bit as in the last few months, probably more than ever, but probably for the first 10 years or so of us running this business, we didn't spend $1 on marketing. Like it was just, everything was word of mouth. Every person or team that signed up had heard from somebody who had heard from somebody who had played somewhere. And that's changed, and it's not always exactly the way to view it, because like we do have people on our team who focus on sales, and that's us spending money on sales and growth. But we don't really use traditional marketing tactics and budgets and things like that. Like we try to hack our growth in every way that we can. We try to be smart, we try to be scrappy, stay up with trends, those kind of things. And so in order for us to grow, it's almost entirely word of mouth. As the business gets bigger, in a lot of ways it becomes easier in some cities. But I think if you look at what we're doing, our reach in terms of locations continues to grow. And so we're always pushing to find a new location to play in and continue to bring the name of who we are to a new spot. That is actually always this big challenge for us, because you're opening into cities that have never heard of you, or maybe they have, but you don't have a name. They don't have that person that they know in that city that's played in it, and it becomes like a trust factor that you have to build with people really quickly. So for us to do that in a new market, can be really hard, but it is word of mouth that kind of gets it around, because that's how you get those initial signups. And then as you start to build up a reputation and people have a good experience and enjoy what you're doing, kind of the return customers come a little bit easier. And so, yeah, we've basically almost entirely been built off word of mouth. But as the business gets bigger and you have more opportunity, you look to attract customers in different ways.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, just to add a little more context there, like what Ethan said. We now are about 25 employees, like the head office level. And until about 6 months ago, I think our total spend on like social media ads, Facebook ads, all that kind of stuff was actually like, I don't know, under $1,000. So we only started spending money on ads in the last 6 months, maybe even 3 months, honestly.
That's awesome.
So just to be like really kind of transparent about that, just how important word of mouth and like that sort of virality has been to our strategy. Whereas now, we're tapping just a little bit more traditional to complement some of the more viral stuff that we're looking at.
Was there ever, like throughout obviously all the expansion that you guys have done, was there a moment that you look at as like, this is kind of when it really started to boom, or has it been more of like a gradual growth over the course of the years that you guys have been doing this?
I wonder if Raina will say the same thing. But
maybe, yeah. Sometimes we think pretty similar on these things. I mean, it's definitely gradual, but there has been inflection points where I think we saw more growth. And the biggest for us, as crazy as it sounds, was actually COVID. I don't know, Ethan, was that?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
it was COVID.
Yeah, like COVID for us. COVID kind of, the world ended, I guess, like March 10th, 2020, which is coincided with the end of our season anyways, like our winter year. So we didn't get to play our WAG that year, which is the kind of like our Memorial Cup finals for everyone. But other than that, our season's pretty much finished. Obviously, our summer leagues were canceled. But when that September started up again, things were sort of open on some levels. And pretty much me and Ethan went after every tactic, strategy, loophole we could find that allowed the game of hockey to be played. The rules were very different in order to meet health and safety and all that good stuff. But I think we ran, was it 4-on-4 leagues? I can't remember. 3-on-3 leagues.
We changed we changed the number of players on the team, the number of teams in a bubble, the number of players on the ice, the number
no spitting, no water bottles, getting dressed at home.
The amount of changes, like the check-in, everything about it
check-ins
completely changed in order to accommodate the game. But I think the biggest thing, and this is what Ray was kind of getting to, was that while we were trying to do that, and it definitely wasn't easy, and honestly, I bet you if you talk to a customer of ours from 2021, there's gonna be a bunch that would be like, that was crazy, because it didn't run normally, because everything opened and closed and opened and closed, and it wasn't like this simple process of like you'd want it to be, where you play every game at the same day or time each week at the same rink. It wasn't like that at all. But nobody else was trying at all. Like nobody else even tried. And so when COVID hit and we were opening, everything else was closed. We said, we're going to give it a shot. I think we both lost a lot of hair over that period, trying to keep things kind of afloat and keep going.
My hairline used to be down here.
And yeah, like it was, nobody else was even trying. And so what ended up happening, I think, with us in terms of like that point where it really started to grow, was that everyone that wanted to do something, even if they didn't play in our leagues, just to do something, like our games became attended, because everyone had nothing. There were no bars. There was nowhere to go.
We were essentially the only game in town in a lot of cities. And for a lot of university students, they weren't even allowed to like party at that point, because all the bars, because the only social element they got was LUG. And so it almost became a little bit of a boon for us, in the sense that we were doing something special. And I think that people took note of that. Again, we didn't have a big team. I think maybe we had at that point 2 employees or something.
Yeah.
Outside of Ethan and myself. And I actually had another entrepreneurial business, a software company that I was running at that time. And so, hats off to Ethan here, who was kind of shouldering a lot more of the load. But yeah, people really, I think they could see just how much we cared. And that was before the days of the influencer driving the brand. So people didn't know who Ethan and myself were, but they could see that LUG was trying to make something special and fun, where for a lot of people, there was a lot of anxiety, depression, things going on because people were stuck indoors all day. And, it was amazing that we were able to do that. And honestly, from that point onward, we had a really good trajectory that continued to go up. And, everyone talks about the hockey stick growth. That's what we're trying to achieve constantly. And I think that was a big, big year in which that sort of started for us, because a lot of people learned about LUG for the first time, which was awesome.
Yeah. And just last thing, honestly, because I think it's interesting, is that in that period, that growth that Ray talks about, for us, that was the number of players. But because of the way that the world was working and like the opens and closes and things like that, the business lost money. Like, we didn't actually make any money in that entire period. We gave so much back to players because we weren't able to run it. But I think what it did do, like Ray said, is it was like we were trying, people could see that. There was like just kind of like this credibility that like we were out there trying to do honestly what just made sense, which was to give people an outlet to play, have fun, meet people, be social, be sporty, be active, all that kind of stuff. And our numbers of participants exploded, but our revenue dropped off a cliff. We lost money. But when the world came back and the players stayed, that's when all of a sudden we were like, okay, let's start hiring a team, because we have a lot of players now and we don't have to, close and not operate for periods of the year. And let's start building out the business and bring more people on. And, a little bit after that's when, we kind of got introduced to you, Nick, and it's kind of how that process has been going for the last little while.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting to hear. I think it's crazy to think about, and we don't need to open the can of worms on it, but how much COVID changed. And it was so negative in the moment, but you hear the positives like this of how it changed things for you guys. And like you said, not only the new people signing up because it was the only show in town, but the loyalty of those people who then stick around because, hey, these guys went above and beyond to get us out there on the ice and give us something to do. I think that loyalty obviously goes a long way with any brand, but especially when it's a niche kind of market like hockey is. I want to get into both of your experiences a little bit there. You talked about kind of your answers being the same and meshing together there. And Ray, you mentioned kind of the entrepreneurial side of things. From a LinkedIn look, obviously you're both business guys. Ray, it looked a little bit more entrepreneurial. Ethan, it looked like you kind of dabbled in some of the more corporate roles. Now you both end up here. You're both building this. How have your kind of past experiences and path shaped how you're doing business today, shaped how you work together, mesh everything together? Because you seem like you're on the same page with everything, but a little bit different paths along the way to get here, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I guess for Ethan and I studied business in university, came out and pretty quickly jumped into entrepreneurship. For me, I always wanted to work in sports. Honestly, that was as a kid, just like most kids, but didn't really necessarily see the pathway to doing that. I didn't have an interest to go work at a team or anything like that. But entrepreneurship in general, especially software, was something that was always kind of interesting to me, and managing, building companies. So yeah, over the last, I guess it's been now like 10, 12 years, me and Ethan connected. Ethan was I'll let him speak, but doing some other stuff, because this really, like I said earlier, like the monetization kind of question, it's not something that happens so early. And unless you really are willing to go all in at the start, which has its own benefits and its own sort of elements, but you might not get paid for a while. Especially when it's a passion project, you got to do other stuff. And, for me, I was lucky that I had another business software company that I kind of went into and worked on, and we had a profitable exit, and I sold that to a private equity company based in San Fran. And just that experience alone, and now doing LUG full time, taught me a lot that I think Ethan can see is kind of some of the elements that I bring. My background's not really in marketing per se, or even like sports other than this. And so my element is more of the sort of structure, managing people, more of that formal side of it of entrepreneurship and looking at scale and growth. And then I think, I'll let Ethan speak to it, but Ethan's more of the skill set of the actual sort of marketing and a little bit more of the sports and the event side of our business. That's so important that Ethan brings me. I don't know, Ethan, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ray said it. Like when you're running a passion project and it's growing, but like Ray mentioned earlier, we bootstrapped everything. So for a really long time, every dollar that we made just went right back into the business. We're talking like a decade of us just reinvesting and using it to hire staff and using it to add more to the player experience and to make improvements in the jerseys and to hire better officials and to bring out photographers more. Like all that kind of stuff is what we decided to spend money on. So I was working in some corporate roles. Like I did some marketing event stuff where I learned a lot about like the operations and logistics of events, which in a way is really all LUG can be sometimes, which is just putting on an event every night of the week and a ton of different locations simultaneously, which is very complex when you actually start breaking down the volume of moving pieces that are going at any given time. But I kind of worked in that, and eventually I went back to school and got my MBA at Western, and came out and worked in a corporate role at one of the banks, and did some consulting within the bank to I guess just to be a bit more business minded and things like that. But yeah, we both have different experiences, and in a lot of ways it's complemented and provided different perspectives on the business overall. So yeah, it's a bit of a journey, but I think we're both at our cores like entrepreneurs, and would much rather be working on something like this than having to continue to work in other areas, because this is what's fun. This is what's exciting. Or you never really know what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. Last week, didn't really know that Nick would be talking to you and Lukas, and that something like that comes up, and it's definitely fun and exciting. So I think that's really kind of like one of the cool perks about the job. But I think really what motivates us both with LUG is just the mission of getting people playing sports and building sports infrastructure across North America, because that to me is one of the coolest things.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you guys have talked about it a bit previously, kind of to segue back into LUG here, is like the culture that you guys are building, and what role does like the off ice culture, everything from like even jerseys to events, group chats, rivalries, like that kind of stuff, play in the experience that you guys bring to the table?
Yeah, the best part about LUG, in my opinion, that I can see is that when you're playing like a random league or shinny or whatever it is, obviously it's competitive and it's fun if you're there. But when you're going to a LUG game, it's just the whole thing's elevated. You're showing up. One, you never know what you're going to get. We have surprises at the rink all the time between our brand partners, photographers, merch. There's just always something going on, which creates a bit of a buzz. And so when people are showing up to the rink, it gives them a feeling that this is something special and this is something that they're going to really enjoy. The funniest example that I always think of, and this is such a small thing, but I play in a lot of men's leagues, adult leagues in Toronto here, have for a long time. When my team scores a goal, you sally whatever, and then you just skate to the dot. In LUG, when someone scores a goal, every time, no matter all the teams, I always see they go and do a bench run where they high five their whole team as if they're pros, and they're doing big sallies. They're going crazy. That is something that really is special and unique to LUG that I just noticed doesn't happen anywhere else. And it's not something we told them to do. It's not something we asked them to do. They do it because when they're playing LUG, they feel like they're a pro, and that's what the pros do. Versus when you're playing a regular league, it's not cool to show the emotion. And I think that's one of the big examples of an anecdote where that kind of comes out. Just that energy that you get at a LUG game. And I always say this to Ethan, I wish it was as good now as when I was in school, so that I could actually experience it the way it is truly now. Because it was very different back in the day. But I don't know, Ethan, anything to add on that one?
No, it's a great example. I think the small moments at the games that just make, like Ray and I've always said to people that when you play in LUG, it's like playing in a real league again. A lot of people from like the Toronto area know like the GTHL or whatever similar leagues where you're on a team, like the team on your back. Like this is like you have the merch, like the apparel, like you're going to the rink, and it's like your identity, what AA team you are. Literally, like your select team is your identity. And I think when you get to college, university as a young adult, and you just start playing a weekly game of hockey, you lose that, because like, what's the league? Does it really matter? who's on your team, who are you playing. But with LUG, like you show up and like you're playing with your best buddies, you're playing against people that you might know or that are at least in the same walk of life as you or kind of in the same age as you that you know that have a similar background or have similar interests, and you're kind of part of that community right away. And so you get to the game and you actually care about it, right? Like you're repping like a jersey. Like, you know, a couple of years ago we added socks, which was just visually one of the best things that we did. Like the jerseys, and everyone looks so good on the ice. Our jerseys keep getting better. Identity gets crafted around it. They just care so much. And like that's the feeling that we're trying to bring to as many people as we can, is just to make them care about the game again. Like it doesn't have to just be, you know, showing up to the rink just to play hockey because you like hockey. It should be going there to play, to be a part of this program, to like compare your stats against your buddies that live in another province, to be part of the same thing, working towards one goal. And that's something that was missing. So Ray's example of like, you know, the daps on the bench after you score a goal, it's just a great example of like things that happen specifically in our program, because the culture that's been developed is, you know, is one about competition and just, you know, embracing the special moments of the game, the celebrations, the goals, you know, winning a championship, things like that.
It's very well said, and I think I've said to you both off air, but I would have killed for this to be around a couple years earlier when I was at Waterloo. I think, like you said, that off ice culture, just getting good people together, having something to look forward to a couple nights a week instead of Sunday nights at 11 p.m. and you're starting the day Monday a little upset about your ice time or whatever it was. But I want to talk a little bit about behind the scenes. You guys are always hiring a ton of roles across campuses to make this all happen, whether that's, you know, your campus commissioners, your referees, your timekeepers. Do you know how many people totally are helping kind of make LUG operational today? What do you guys look for in roles like that? And how have you seen, you know, people kind of pick up different skill sets and experiences through these roles to help them with future opportunities in the game of hockey or sports in general?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ray. Let me.
Yeah,
I wanted to say one thing. If you're listening to this podcast and you think that a program like this would be something that your community or campus would be interested in, DM us or email us, because that is actually how we get these started with a lot of places. Send us a message and we will help bring this infrastructure to your community and get it started. So if someone's listening and thinks, hey, I'd love to play in a league that these guys are talking about, I like what you guys are doing online, I wish that was here. The answer is it can be. All you have to do is just reach out to us and we will literally work with you to make that happen. So that's like the first thing. Ray, I think you were going to talk a bit more just about like the numbers and
yeah. I mean, what Ethan said is 100% correct. Like, if there is no LUG in your city, whether it's a university town or not, doesn't matter. Definitely hit us up because we will help facilitate that. Just to your question, probably somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 like part-time sort of people, between all the refs, timekeepers, game day staff, photographers, you know, videographers, just social media staff, like everyone that we do, that's involved in the game. It's, you know, it's probably even over 2,000 if we're being real. I've never actually counted. Our head office staff is about 25 people, but the interesting thing that I can say is that working for LUG as a student is probably one of the best foot in the door of the sports industry jobs you can have, let alone just any job. I know even for me, when I was at university, I actually was working in finance in the summers, and this was the best interview topic that I used to get those jobs. I worked at some of the Canadian financial institutions, and this was the most unique thing that no one else could say they were doing was, you know, being that commissioner on campus. And we've seen a lot of our alumni commissioners like go on to pretty good jobs in, you know, investment banking, consulting, law, getting like all over the place. It's a great stepping stone, and there aren't many like it, especially, you know, if you can get paid the same money, better money to work than at like, you know, something at the mall. No offense to a job at the mall, but you know, working at a retail store is something that a lot of people have done. Working at a unique sports business like LUG is not something that a lot of people have done. Yeah. And you know, that's why we really try to find the best talent that we can, people that are enthusiastic, people that want to go over and above working for us, because there's so many roles when we're looking for so many people. And I can't tell you how many messages I get, and you know, I love it. We're speaking to kids and passing their information along, because I was that kid when I was, you know, 19 years old, 20 years old, and it did a lot for me. And you know, I'm sure Ethan would say the same. So yeah, we're always looking for good people who want to get involved. So definitely, like Ethan said, please hit us up.
Yeah, that's great. Now to kind of dive in, like to some maybe of your biggest challenges or growing pains that you guys have had, is there anything that you can look at and think like, oh, we had to learn that the hard way, or anything that comes up of like, that just really you look at as like, that was a lesson that we learned that made us better. And that's kind of how we've continued to grow kind of thing.
I think probably, at least coming to mind for me, and I'm sure Ray would probably agree with this one too, that just the hardest thing about the business as it grows is scale. It's so complex to deliver the same experience and deliver on all of the objectives that you have across so many different pillars as you roll out the program into so many locations all at once. As growth becomes a bigger component of what you're doing, you're rolling out to more facilities, you're playing in multiple facilities in the same city at the same time. You have more teams, more leagues, more skill levels. Every component that you're trying to work on, like Ray had mentioned earlier, with like variable costs and things like that, it's all variable as well. Like more jerseys, more photographers are needed, more officials are needed. That component of it is just a big challenge that we face all the time. And if you saw behind the scenes, the ability of our team, who do an unbelievable job of problem solving last minute situations that pop up, it's one of the hardest things for us is just the scale of it, and then over delivering on the everyday components that people want, which is just a great experience, a great league, a great community to be a part of. For me, it would probably be scale. I don't know, Ray, if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Even taking a step back from like a specific example, honestly, the problems and learnings, it's everything. It is literally everything. Whether it's LUG or any entrepreneurial business, the problems never cease to amaze. I mean, I'm sure Nick, you can speak to this with this podcast. I don't know everything about this podcast, but I could probably rattle off 50 potential problems I could pop up and probably have for you. The problems don't end, and it's not really about what they are. It's more about how do you overcome them, how do you solve them. Scale is the ultimate goal. And we know what Ethan said. You want to overcome them because the next time you see it, you don't want it to be a problem. You want it to be something that it's not an if, it's a when. Right. And when comes, you're prepared. That's where the learning comes in. That's what we're constantly talking about with our staff, because it doesn't matter how organized we are. There's going to be a city where the refs didn't show up for 5 different possible reasons, and we're going to get 15 messages from players at 10:30 at night on a Tuesday telling us how dumb LUG is and how we're the worst business ever because this happened. And that's one game that happened, right? Single game that the refs didn't show up for. So we know those problems will happen, even despite our best abilities, because I made this joke earlier. Exactly. We're humans. We're not all AI yet. So, the mistakes are happening, but yeah, like it's kind of crazy. But, just on that AI note, we are so heavily investing in AI right now in our business to eliminate those mistakes, because we actually this week asked all of our employees, the whole team, look at their jobs, look at their roles, and want to put into 2 lists: things that only we can do, and things that I can actually pass off to AI. Maybe they don't know how to do it using AI yet, but things like scheduling, things like basic customer service, things like figuring out allocations of shipments. Some of these are topics that if we can do that, we're actually going to solve problems for the business, because people will be freed up to spend more time on the really hard problems as opposed to wasting their time on the easy problems that just require time. Because using that time that could be done with AI is actually a net negative, because you're not spending it on the hard problems that we need to solve and we need to learn from. So, I think that kind of sums up the problem question.
Yeah, no, very well said, and love to hear it on AI. I think it's we just did a very similar exercise at my day job here of just type out all the shit you do. What do you not like? What takes you the longest time? And again, like you said, just kind of streamline things there. A phrase that I'll give credit to a coworker for, but they said, like, don't look at AI as a tool, look at it as a team member, and you're pawning all your annoying tasks off to this new team member, right? And that's helped us a ton. And yeah, I can imagine with, again, the scale of the operation you guys guys have there, how many different variables there are. The more you can get out of your hands, the better there. But Lukas, I'll throw it over to you next there.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into any exciting things. Where is LUG heading next? Like, is there any big projects for expansion or expansions on the horizon that you guys want to touch on or talk about?
I think we're always cooking up something. I don't know that there's a big project that we're ready to to announce right now. Our focus right now is on growing our sports offerings. We've got we mentioned hockey, obviously, but we also do flag football and softball programs, and we've run a couple of lacrosse leagues as well. So our focus is on adding more locations, improving the programs that we're currently running, continuing to grow the portfolio of sports that we're offering.
There is one big idea, but it's more Ethan's to share, and I don't know if now is the time to publicly announce it yet.
Yeah.
I think he was dancing around it, but there's a big idea that Ethan's been pushing that we're looking at that
yeah,
might have to keep under wraps for now, but
yeah, there's a few things that we've got kicking around for sure, and I think there's going to be a time and a place to make those announcements. So definitely stay tuned for some big things to come. But yeah, right now, our focus is we just launched our summer season, I guess, on Sunday of this past week. We got more, I think, more teams than ever. I don't know what the exact numbers were, but the program kind of blew up way more than we were anticipating. So we've got more people playing in more cities than ever this summer, which is really great. And yeah, we're kind of working on some pretty exciting things cooking up in the kitchen behind the scenes, but TBD on those announcement dates.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned. But really appreciate the time and the insight on everything here, guys. And we always wrap things up here with career advice for anybody looking to break into the industry, looking to get into the world of sports. My career advice that I'll say for this one is apply for these LUG part-time roles. Again, teams love seeing teams. Teams love seeing sports experience. If you can go get photos of a LUG game, if you can go timekeep there, if you can help the operation run smooth, that will help your resume so much more than working at Chipotle or the mall or wherever it may be. No offense to those places, but I stole that one from you here. Ethan, I'll start with you. What sort of career advice would you give to anybody looking to break into the sports industry today?
I think I would say don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to message people or companies or businesses that you want to be a part of. We get messages like this all the time, and every single time we get a message from somebody that says, hey, you should do this, or hey, you should be here, we screenshot it, we bring it to the team, we talk about it, we reply to that person, we speak to them about it. Like, there is not a message that gets sent to us like that we don't actually take seriously and act on. Now, not every business can be as flexible and fast to work like we do. Sure, if you sent a message to the Seattle Seahawks and said, hey, like, you should open up a camp in Toronto, they'd probably be like, you're out to lunch. But reach out to companies and put yourself out there, and try to get yourself in front of people, because it will lead to opportunities for you. And the more persistent you are, and the more targeted you are, the better better opportunities you're going to find for yourself. So
I couldn't agree more. Ray, what's your wise piece of wisdom here for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, sports is such a big industry. It's obviously like the most enticing. It's what but a lot of young kids want to get into. When I was in university and I was kind of networking with people in sports and just talking to them, the funny thing, they all told me don't work in sports. That was what they all told me. Yet they were all working sports. But the actual kind of key piece that I learned from those earlier conversations is that it's important to get a skill, get something that you're really good at, and doesn't necessarily mean working in sports at the start. Get a skill, whether it's sales, accounting, legal, consulting, business evaluations, like anything that you can actually do that's maybe more of a niche. And then you can bring that into the sports world by working, finding a job later on. It's hard to really get, your first job in sports is going to pay you something that necessarily you're going to be happy with. But if you're doing it for the right reasons and you're willing to really push through and grind, the fruits of the labor come, and it takes time. And I know that from lots of people who work in the industry. And, especially with us, with LUG, like, we have full-time positions where we're constantly looking for people, recent grads, people maybe have like 1 to 2 years of experience. And working with us is I think one of the best possible opportunities, because in a lot of our roles, they are commission based, and we try to really aggressively provide comp that can grow over time based on the success of the person. And the role we have now, which is the VPR, it's the venue partnership representative. We're calling it the Viper. That's our internal name for that thing. And we're looking for somebody who's maybe been out of school for a year. Maybe they've worked at like a SaaS software company. They want to work in sports, and honestly, we're going to try and put them in a position where they can make the same type of comp as they would at one of those roles, but working in sports. And that's a unique thing, I think, about working in sports, but also LUG in particular.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and great advice there as well. But guys, again, can't thank you enough for the time here. It's been awesome to see the growth of LUG. Like I say, I think I was probably just wrapping up at Waterloo. I remember kind of it started rolling out there as I was wrapping things up. But it's been awesome to see from afar and up close, how it's grown. You guys are crushing it. It's cool to see the business side of it grow. It's cool to see all the random schools and campuses it's popping up on now. So thank you both for the time here. Continued success with LUG, and we'll chat with you listeners next week here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Appreciate it, guys.